Hey everybody, today we are back on New York City's Billionaires Row, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a walking tour around one of my favorite buildings, 157, or 157 West 57th Street, which just so happens to be the first building that was ever constructed on New York City's Billionaires Row. So we're going to be doing a series on the channel where we go building by building, particularly all of the very notable buildings in New York City, and talk about the developer, talk about the architect, give a little bit of a description of the building, and a little bit of a backstory of just how it is possible for these developers to build so tall and so skinny. The building that you're looking at on the right is actually the skinniest residential apartment building in the world. It is Steinway Tower. But the building in question for this video is dead centered in the middle of the screen, which is 157 West 57th Street. Now, I think it's important to start just talking about how these developers are able to build so tall. You know, there's people out there that think if you want to build super tall towers in Manhattan, you just have to buy a plot of land and you could build as tall as you want. Well, that's actually not how it works. You have to assemble the appropriate air rights in order to do so. So it's almost like a game of poker. And this could take years, this could take decades in order to buy out the surrounding buildings, accumulate those air rights to be able to build as tall as you can. There's also a lot of zoning regulations that go into it. So these developers, such as the one we're talking about today, which is Xtel, that just so happens to be the developer of 157, took them over 10 years to assemble the appropriate air rights to be able to build 157. Now, construction was completed in 2014, and if you want to look at something quite unique, in 2012, New York City went through a very, very big hurricane called Hurricane Sandy. And this was just during the time when 157 was going up and under construction, and you could see the crane that sat atop of 157 actually broke off in the winds and started whipping around. It's actually one of the most iconic photos from Hurricane Sandy. Now, we talked about the developer. The developer is Xtel. Gary Burnett is the CEO and founder. They're one of the most, I would say, notable and prominent developers in New York City right now. They've also done Central Park Tower, which is 217 West 57th Street, which just so happens to be the tallest building right now on Billionaires Row, which is a little bit further down as you head towards 8th Avenue. Now, who developed and who designed, I should really say designed, the facade of 157? Well, for that, you would have to turn to French architect Christian de Portzamparc, who is really one of the most, not only New York City renowned and French renowned, but really world-renowned architects. And he made it so the facade of the building, and you could see this a little bit better during the daytime, it almost acts like a little bit of a waterfall. It kind of gives that cascading effect of water trickling down the side of the building. And you could see it more so from the 57th Street side as you're standing right outside the Park Hyatt. But the interiors of the building, which if you've ever had the opportunity to go into one of the residential units at 157, from the bathrooms to the showers to the kitchens, all of the interiors were designed by world-renowned architect Thomas Juul-Hansen, who we oftentimes talk about on the channel. He has multiple other projects in the city. His most recent project is over in Sutton Place called Sutton Tower. And really, Thomas Juul-Hansen's claim to fame, if you ever watch any of his interviews or you met him in person, the one thing that he'll say that differentiates himself from a lot of the other architects is he only wants to use exclusively natural materials in his designs. You know, according to him, if you use a lot of the synthetic materials as well as artificial materials, the projects can look dated very, very fast. But if you use natural stones and natural marbles for your design, well, the interiors will stay timeless in perpetuity, which I happen to agree with. So you're right across the street from the Russian Tea Room. You're also right across the street from the very famous Carnegie Hall. And now we'll explain these two doors just over to your right. We're looking across 57th Street here in New York. This is north facing. Door number 1, which is right here. The address is 153 West 57th Street. That just so happens to be one of the most luxurious hotels anywhere in the city. It is the Park Hyatt New York. If you're spending some time in New York City, you're looking for a really nice hotel to stay at, might I recommend the Park Hyatt right here in 157. You have a restaurant called The Living Room, which if you look very, very closely is actually right here. You do not have to stay at the Park Hyatt in order to dine at the living room. So I would highly recommend you pop in, grab a coffee, grab some lunch or dinner, because it is absolutely spectacular. Obviously, all the interiors done by Thomas Juul-Hansen. And then on the left-hand side, you have the main entrance of 157. So if you own a condo or you rent a condominium, you would go right in there. We'll continue on our walk down the block. I'll explain a few of the notable residences in this tower. Now, obviously, you had some record-breaking sales here. The two most prominent and known about sales happen to be on the 75th floor, which is a duplex penthouse that is owned by CEO and founder of Pershing Square, which is Bill Ackman. And then you also have Michael Dell owning the Winter Garden unit. Ackman owns the Winter Garden unit. Michael Dell also owns a really, really nice unit in the building. And currently on the market, there's 10 units. Prices range from $3,250,000 all the way up to $21,500,000 for some of the higher floors and higher bedrooms. Now, we did have a record-setting sale in 2024. The 83rd floor sold for $30,535,000 at an average price per square foot of $4,700 a foot, and total square footage of that unit was 6,240 square foot. So an amazing, amazing unit, full floor. And pretty much all of the available units now in that building are resales, except for one. You have unit 32D, which is a 1-bedroom, 1.5-bathroom unit. It just so happens to be one of 2 units in the entire building that have outdoor space. So if you're not too familiar with the real estate business, what a sponsor unit means is you're buying directly from the developer. A lot of times when developers launch these projects, obviously there's only been one owner, which has been the developer. So if you're purchasing directly from the developer, that means it is a sponsor sale. And if you're purchasing from somebody who bought and they're just selling their apartment, that is called a resale. Now, in my opinion, there's a few different things that you could do when you're purchasing from a developer. Usually they have a little bit more price flexibility depending on the time of year you're purchasing. Here in New York City, you have to pay for your mansion taxes and your transfer taxes. However, if you're purchasing from the sponsor, oftentimes if you can come in with a very, very strong all-cash offer, you can put in your offer that you would like to have the sponsor pay the mansion taxes and pay the transfer taxes, right? So a developer usually has a little bit more flexibility on that, particularly if you can come in with a very, very strong offer, usually all cash, and if you can close very, very quickly. We're going to walk to the north side. You can see Central Park. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to do in this neighborhood. You have Carnegie Hall. You're very close to Lincoln Center. You're very close to Central Park South. So you'll obviously have those unobstructed views of the city. This is the 57th Street subway station. You can get the N, Q, R, and W trains. If we look to the east, you'll be able to see 432 Park Avenue, which just so happens to be another building that went up on New York City's Billionaires Row. I'll take you to the front of the building, which is on 58th Street. You could see the private parking garage and also the back entrance to the Park Hyatt New York. And just off to the right here, you also have another beautiful building, which is Alwyn Court. If you stand on the corner here by Central Park South, you could really see an unbelievable juxtaposition between the older style architecture of Manhattan and the new wave, which happens to be these glass encased skyscrapers. You know, 157, almost every single unit in that building has these really beautiful floor-to-ceiling glass windows. And it's very strategically located because Central Park South, a lot of those buildings are historically protected. So obviously you won't have any building on Central Park South, and you certainly won't have any new buildings going up in Central Park itself. So you'll know that your views are all protected. So this is Alwyn Court, right on the corner of 58th Street and 7th Avenue. And if I turn the camera to the north, you really see the juxtaposition in architectural integrity from Alwyn Court, and then at 157 West 57th Street, dead centered in your screen. And then just off to the left, you have the skinniest residential apartment, which is the Steinway Tower. This is the New York Athletic Club as well. If you're curious about these ultra-luxury buildings, particularly on New York City's Billionaires Row, might I suggest reading this book called Billionaires Row by Catherine Clark. She is one of the most famous real estate journalists at the Wall Street Journal, and it's a really good history lesson on how these buildings came about, the process of developers accumulating air rights, the process of assemblage. This is now the private parking garage to 157. One of the things about buying in these buildings is you have that exclusivity, right? You never have to come out onto the street level if you live in this building. You could have your chauffeur, your driver take you to where you need to go and then drive you directly into your apartment. Here's a visual of the north side of the building. Above the 25th floor, which is where all the amenities are, you have a saltwater pool. You also have a library, you have an aquarium, you have a full fitness room and a spa where you can get your nails done, your hair cut, and a dog spa as well. And above that are the condos with those unobstructed views of Central Park. Really quite something. This is the Essex House, and if you go on Street Easy and you look at some of the units, which are my personal favorite units at 157, you can have units that have this unobstructed view over Central Park that rest just above the very famous J.W. Marriott Essex House sign. And it's almost as if you're floating over the park. You see some of the most historical buildings in New York City, a lot of the Art Deco facades of these buildings. It's really an unbelievable experience. And then 166, 58th Street, that is the front entrance of the Park Hyatt New York. I'll point the camera to the sky one more time because the building just off to your right is also another Extel development. That is Central Park Tower, 217 West 57th Street. If you own a unit either in 157 or Central Park Tower, you're able to use the amenities in both buildings. You have this beautiful 100th floor restaurant in Central Park Tower that you could also use if you own at 157 as well. So Extel has a lot of different perks when you purchase a unit in their building. But I want you to check out that last available sponsor unit at 157, 32D. It has an outdoor terrace, one of two units in the building that have outdoor space, very rare, and who knows? Maybe you can get a good deal on it if you ask for the transfer taxes, the mansion taxes, and own a piece of New York City's Billionaires Row yourself. On the next video, we're going to be doing an in-depth walking tour of 432 Park Avenue. I'll leave you guys with some B-roll of some of the interiors of these condos at 157. And until then, we'll see you in the next one. And if you need help purchasing a unit on Billionaires Row, feel free to reach out to me via email, and I'd be more than happy to help you with your purchase and have you call New York City's Billionaires Row your home. Thanks so much for watching.